Hi, everyone. We are back to the show. It is episode 126 of the podcast. And today we're going to dive right into the topic, which is all about the hidden danger of strict diets. In particular, vegan diets, carnivore diets, keto diets are the main diets I'm going to talk about today. The reason why I want to talk about this episode is because, right now there's a lot of different diets going on in the nutrition world. And I think it's been like this for a period of time now where a lot of people are going strict vegan, very strict elimination diets, carnivore diets, and things like that. I have episodes that actually talk about the carnivore diet a little bit, but I want to dive into the actual consequences of being on these diets. And the problem with a lot of these diets is a lot of people go on them because it's perceived as healthy, right? Or it's perceived as the diet that you have to go on in order to control your symptoms, in order to control your sensitivities. But over time, it actually leads to more issues and actually deeper issues that are a lot difficult to heal. So it's important to listen to this episode until the very end because I'm going to be sharing everything you need to know about these diets and why it's something you want to think twice before going on diets. So in case you're not familiar with the different diets I'm going to be talking about today, there's vegan, carnivore, and keto. The vegan diet is basically when you eat all plant-based foods. Sometimes people go on raw vegan diets, meaning all of their foods are raw. There's no cooking involved, there's no heating involved, just fresh fruits or fresh vegetables. On a vegan diet, you're not eating any animal-based products, no meat products, no dairy and eggs. So it's primarily all fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes are usually what is included in a vegan diet. Now, we do see a lot of benefits when it comes to vegan diets because it's very, very high in fiber. There's lots of different fruits and vegetables in a healthy vegan diet, although there are some vegan diets where people start to eat more of those carbs and processed foods, and that, won't be considered a healthier diet. But generally speaking, if you're someone that's vegan and you're including lots of those fruits and vegetables and beans and legumes, it is very good in terms of different nutrients, antioxidants that you can find in these sorts of foods. There are some downfalls when it comes to vegan diets, especially if you're not careful with the nutrients and the foods that you're eating, because certain vitamins can only be found in meats. For example, vitamin B12 and other minerals like iron, which you can get from plant-based foods, but usually the iron form in animal-based foods are more bioavailable than the iron found in plant-based foods. Sometimes we see absorption issues for people who are on vegan diets. There are some studies that show that vegan diets can actually reduce certain micronutrients, B12 and iron, for example, unless they supplement. So that's why if you are on a vegan diet, it's important to look at your nutrient levels because deficiency is actually very common. The other thing about vegan diets is if you are a raw vegan and you eat a lot of raw foods, that can actually exacerbate digestive issues, especially if you're someone that has poor digestion, which a lot of people have because of low stomach acid, because of stress and other root causes. And so if you're eating a lot of raw vegetables and raw fruit, it might not be supportive of your actual gut healing because it can irritate the gut lining even further, especially for those who are sensitive, which is why in my practice and actually in some of my podcast episodes, I actually talk about why it's important to incorporate both cooked foods and raw foods. Even if you're not vegan, it's just really important for your digestion, not just to eat salads, for example, because it could be difficult for your gut lining and for your digestion. So that's a little bit about vegan diets. Then we have elimination diet. So elimination diet is a type of diet that removes common allergens or irritants or inflammatory foods, for example, dairy, gluten, soy, nightshades, to see if you have any food sensitivities to these foods. The good thing about elimination diets is that it can help to pinpoint any food sensitivities. And now it can also improve symptoms like eczema, or if you have bloating, or if you have gas, or if you have other imbalances in your systems. Autoimmune conditions has shown to be helpful for that. However, the problem is with these elimination diets is that a lot of times people don't know when to come off of these diets and they end up being on it for too long, leading to long-term restrictions. And when you're on an elimination diet for too long of a time, it can reduce microbiome diversity because you're not eating, certain proteins or certain grains. When you have decreased microbial diversity, that can lead to nutrient deficiencies, problems with the gut barrier lining because you need nutrients to support that. And you also want more of the good microbes in your gut because it helps with supporting skin health. Many of the microbes in the gut help to regulate immune activity, maintaining balance in your immune system so that it isn't overactive, which leads to allergic conditions like eczema and allergies and asthma. So you really need a diverse microbiome in order to basically balance all of the systems in your body, including your immune system, your skin, even your hormones, and your nervous system. So when you're on elimination diets, it could be harmful in the sense that if you're on it for too long, you're really not giving your microbiome the opportunity to diversify itself. Okay, similarly to carnivore diets, I have a lot to say about this diet. I am not a fan of the carnivore diet. I will be right up front. It is not ideal at all for the gut microbiome because you're only eating animal foods, right? There's no plant foods, there's no fiber. You're just eating meat and a lot of fat. Now, a lot of people go on carnivore diets because of weight loss, right? Or because they notice that they're sensitive to a lot of plant-based foods, which is interesting, right? Maybe they're reacting to certain fiber, they're reacting to legumes and beans, they don't know why they're bloated, and their immune system goes out of control. But again, that goes back to, okay, is it the food or is it your gut? Right? And it's definitely your gut. It's not the food that's causing the problem. It's something going on in your microbiome, in your digestion, in your GI tract that is reacting to these foods when it shouldn't be reacting. Fiber is only going to negatively impact you if your gut is compromised. Simple as that. And there's tons of research that talks about how important it is to have fiber in your diet because it produces something called short chain fatty acids. And these fatty acids that are produced from fermenting fibers from plants, they help with gut barrier integrity, anti-inflammatory signaling, supporting your immune system. And so if you have a lack of plant foods for a period of time being on a carnivore diet, you're really going to impact your gut microbiome and also your short chain fatty acid production. Again, keto diets, very similar to carnivore, though it has a little bit of leeway. You know, you can have a little bit of carb. It's mostly high protein, high fat with very low carbohydrate intake. A lot of the times people go on that for the purpose of weight loss. Now, again, because the keto diet is oftentimes low in fiber and very high in fat, if your diet is mostly high fat and high protein, especially saturated fats from certain meats, it can actually increase your cholesterol levels. But not only this, you're at a risk of heart disease as well. Again, very important to not be on a strict diet because you need a balance of protein, fats, and especially fiber. Also, not all fiber and not enough protein, which is what we often see for vegan diets. It's really about, finding the balance of the different macronutrients. Now, I just want to say, people who are listening who are vegans, that are ethical vegans, like you have to be vegan. I'm not saying that it's a bad diet, right? I'm just saying we have to be mindful of the other nutrients beyond just the fiber that we get from plants. Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough fiber? Are you getting enough healthy fats? Because those are also critical components to gut healing, skin healing, immune system, and all the things we're trying to include to heal our bodies. How these strict diets backfire is, number one, I've already kind of talked about it, but it's your gut microbiome diversity. So eating the same foods repeatedly, even if they're quote unquote super healthy, lots of kale or lots of celery or lots of tomatoes, it still reduces the diversity of your gut bacteria. Fiber itself isn't enough for your microbiome. Your gut barrier and your microbiome also needs protein because protein provides amino acids like glutamine, tryptophan. That is what makes up your gut barrier and helps to repair it. Protein is the foundation when it comes to building your gut lining. Fats, on the other hand, support cell membrane. Like your brain cells are actually coated with a layer of fat. So if you're not eating enough fats and you're not eating enough protein, then you're not really feeding the gut the nutrients that it needs beyond the fiber. It's not just about the fiber, it's about the balance. The other reason why strict diets backfire, I've mentioned this as well, is nutrient deficiencies. We see it very commonly in vegans, B12, iron, even omega-3s. Carnivore diets are always low in some sort of antioxidants because you get that a lot in fruits and vegetables, deficient in fiber. When you're on elimination diet, you also have a risk of both, right? Fiber and some proteins, because on elimination diet, there are certain vegetables that are not allowed on this diet, and there's also certain proteins too. If you're not getting nutrition in your diet, then it's going to be really hard for you to see your inflammation heal, even if you're taking supplements, because I always say, Supplements can only help if you have the foundations in place. It can't replace whole foods. It can support your body, but it's not going to work as effectively as someone who has a diverse diet and uses supplements to support that even further. Think of your body as a garden, right? And nutrition is the soil. If you have good soil, rich with all the minerals, this is how you plant a seed and your flowers or your plants will grow. Now, if the soil is depleted or you get poor quality soil, the plant's not going to grow no matter how much water you add into it, no matter how much fertilizer you put into it as well. And think of fertilizer as your supplements, right? You can fertilize a shit out of your soil and give all the nutrients, but if the soil isn't good quality, it's not going to work. The base needs to be healthy. The foundation needs to be healthy. And lastly, let's not forget about the psychological stress with dieting. You're thinking about your meals. You're worrying about what you can eat, what you can't eat. You're worrying about going out for dinner with your friends because there's all these foods on the menu that you're worried about flaring, right? It's a lot of stress when it comes to extreme diet rules. And with the stress around your diet, it's going to start creating food anxiety where you feel that every food is bad, or you feel that if you eat this food, it's going to make your healing go backwards. So all of that is mental stress. And what happens when you have mental stress? It will spike your cortisol levels. It will put your body into fight or flight. And that leads to a systemic effect on your entire body where your gut becomes more permeable. There's more inflammation. It worsens your skin. It worsens your immune system, worsens your gut, right? It becomes a vicious cycle of avoiding to manage your symptoms, but then you're stressed about avoiding, and then the symptoms come back, right? So you're in this circle of avoiding, stressing, avoiding, stressing. We really want to break that cycle by looking at, okay, what are the actual benefits of going on this diet? Do you really need to go on it, or is it just out of fear? Is it just out of desperation? And can we actually expand your diet slowly, right? Work with a dietitian to help you with that, especially if you have sensitivities. How can we start adding these foods back slowly without causing a reaction while healing your body at the same time? Which is number 3, how can we start adding foods back into your diet, especially if you're someone that has sensitivities to foods, whether it's histamines, starchy foods, fiber foods, plant-based foods. You always want to start simple. If you have gut inflammation going on and that's why you're reacting to these certain foods, work on repairing the gut lining. Work on supporting microbiome diversity by adding one food at a time, right? Adding one food slowly is better than not doing anything. And at the same time, you may want to look at some supplements to help target the gut barrier lining so that we can start repairing the gut lining. When you add foods back, you're having less of those reactions. If you need help with this, by the way, this is exactly what I do with my clients. I help them reintroduce foods into their diet, especially with complex allergies and sensitivities. This is going to be like a whole episode on itself if I start getting into the nitty-gritties of how to do that. But generally speaking, if you're trying to come off of these diets, start including these foods one by one, slowly and gradually, and see how you feel. Don't forget to address the underlying factors as to why you're on this diet and also why you're having reactions to the foods that you're avoiding, because it's a lot deeper than just the food. A lot of the times it isn't just the food. It's something going on in the gut, whether it's SIBO, yeast overgrowth, candida, histamine intolerance, salicylate intolerance, and looking at targeted interventions where you can start addressing that while adding foods back without causing symptoms. And if you're someone who doesn't have any sensitivities, I hope this episode inspires you to start adding that food back. Start adding back the foods that you have been avoiding. Always start with whole foods if you can and leave the processed food at the very end. See how you feel, right? I have a good feeling that if you just went on this diet because you were told to, but you don't actually have sensitivities, I think you're going to be fine. I don't think you're actually going to have symptoms. And I would much rather you add them back sooner than later, because the longer you are avoiding these foods, it actually increases the risk of you develop actual allergies to them. And your immune system will actually have lower tolerance to these foods because you haven't had it for such a long time. Okay, I wanted this episode to be short, but ended up being long again because there was so much to say. But I hope you found it helpful. I hope you think about the diet that you're on and whether or not it is actually helping you or not. And if not, perhaps now is time for a change. If you need support with that, you can book a consult in the show notes below. We can talk about how we can support you, where you're feeling stuck in terms of food reintroduction. We can dive into it deeper there. Have a good rest of your day, and we will see you in the next episode.